The rain was falling hard that night, not the gentle kind that soothed the soul, but the merciless kind that soaked through clothes, skin, and pride alike, turning the city streets into rivers of cold reflection. Daniel Cross, one of the youngest self-made millionaires in the city, sat quietly in the back seat of his luxury black car, scrolling absent-mindedly through emails about mergers, profits, and numbers so large they no longer felt real. His driver slowed the vehicle as they approached the massive iron gates of Daniel's mansion, a place built on success, discipline, and an unspoken rule: no distractions. Daniel barely looked up, his mind heavy with exhaustion rather than stress, because money had long stopped being his problem. But then the car stopped completely. Not the smooth pause he expected, but an abrupt halt that made Daniel finally lift his eyes. Through the rain-streaked window, under the glow of a flickering street lamp, he saw something that didn't belong in his world, too fragile. Figures lying near the gate, motionless, drenched, and shaking. An elderly man was slumped forward, his thin body shielding a woman who clutched his coat with trembling hands. For a moment, Daniel thought they were homeless, just another sad image the city had trained him to ignore. But something about the way they were positioned, collapsed, not resting, sent a sharp, unfamiliar jolt through his chest. "Why did we stop?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but curious. The driver hesitated. "Sir, there's an old couple. They're on the ground. I think they've collapsed." Daniel stared. His instincts told him to wave it off, to tell the driver to call security, to let someone else handle it. That's how powerful people survived, by not carrying the weight of every tragedy they passed. But as lightning flashed across the sky, briefly illuminating their faces, Daniel felt something crack inside him. The old woman's eyes were half open, glassy with fear and exhaustion. The man's hands were raw and red, gripping the pavement as if letting go meant surrendering to death itself. Daniel opened the car door before he could talk himself out of it. Rain immediately soaked his tailored suit, the same suit that had cost more than most people's monthly rent. He stepped out, the cold biting into his skin, but he barely noticed. He walked closer, his polished shoes splashing through puddles, his heart beating louder with each step. "Sir, be careful," the driver called out. Daniel knelt beside them, ignoring the mud staining his knees. "Can you hear me?" he asked, his voice suddenly softer than it had been in years. The elderly man slowly lifted his head, his eyes filled not with greed or expectation but embarrassment. We didn't mean to be here," he whispered hoarsely. "My wife, and she couldn't walk anymore. We just needed a moment." The woman coughed weakly, her body shivering uncontrollably. Daniel removed his coat without hesitation and wrapped it around her shoulders. The moment their eyes met, something deep and unsettling stirred within him, a memory he had buried so far down he thought it was gone forever. His own parents. Rain. A night long ago when he had learned what it meant to be invisible. He shook his head slightly as if trying to escape the thought. "You're soaked." "You're freezing," Daniel said. "Why are you out here in this weather?" The old man swallowed hard. "We were trying to get to the hospital. The bus stopped running. Taxis wouldn't stop. We walked until she fell." Daniel felt a tightness in his throat. This wasn't a story he could ignore. This wasn't something money could fix with a phone call and forget. He stood up abruptly. "Open the gates," he ordered his driver. "Now." "But sir." "Now." As the gates slowly opened, Daniel helped the old man lift his wife. She cried out softly, not in pain but in shame. "Please, we don't want trouble," she whispered. "You're not trouble," Daniel replied firmly. "You're guests." Inside the mansion, warmth and light wrapped around them like a different universe. The contrast was almost cruel. The crystal chandeliers, the marble floors, the silence of wealth against the rain-soaked clothes and trembling bodies of the elderly couple. The housekeeper rushed forward, shock written across her face, but Daniel didn't allow questions. "Get blankets, hot tea. Call a doctor," he said, his voice commanding yet urgent. As the couple was gently settled onto a couch, Daniel stood there, water dripping from his hair, staring at them as if they were ghosts from a life he had once lived but never spoken about. The old man looked around in awe, his eyes filling with tears. "We didn't know this was your home," he said quietly. "If we had known—" "It doesn't matter," Daniel cut in. "You're safe now." But safety was a word that echoed strangely in Daniel's mind. Because as he watched the elderly woman clutch the blanket like a lifeline, He realized something unsettling. This couple had trusted fate, enough to collapse at his gate, the very gate he had built to keep the world out. And for the first time in years, Daniel wondered how many people had suffered just beyond those walls while he lived in comfort inside. He turned away, running a hand through his hair, his reflection staring back at him from the glass wall. Expensive suit, controlled expression, powerful posture. But behind it all, a man who suddenly felt very small. As the rain continued outside, Daniel had no idea that this night, this couple, and this single decision would unravel a truth about his past that would change everything he thought he knew about himself. And if you're feeling this moment, if this story is already pulling at something deep inside you, then make sure you subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will not just shock Daniel, it will shatter his entire world in ways no amount of money can protect him from.